Playday.
It certainly is, but we're only at the start, so we'll turn our attention to the first match of the day. It's Elevate taking on WILDCARD, and I think WILDCARD revitalized, Elevate stumbling a little bit here. Dev, how are you feeling?
Excited, very, very keen. I think if you're a WILDCARD fan, you know what pain feels like, and you've been experiencing it for about a year. Remember, this team was the very top of OS and they're second best in APAC in 2019. Then they had that terrible, turbulent year in 2021 where they were almost relegated, not just from APAC South, but also from their national circuit in OCN. They managed to persevere through both of those and changed two players, brought on Cairo and OJ, and the question is, are they back? They beat Knights in their opening game. They had a very close loss to Invictus, and it makes you wonder now, like, surely this team is capable of returning to their former glory.
Man, OJ is so worried about the fact he's going to have to carry WILDCARD through an entire year. He's gone and bought an entire gym.
That's how you train support.
Yeah, that is what it. I mean, look, to be fair, he is a pretty nutty player, and we've talked about him a lot. I think maybe we'll leave the discussions for OJ after the game if they're able to back this up. But I will start to really hone in on Elevate a little bit here, Raven. I think maybe my comments have been a little bit... I don't want to say demeaning by any means, but it really does feel like Elevate have been a little bit rocky, a little bit turbulent. You know, end of 2021, they shook up a little bit, but then started 2022, they went mental at SI, and now we're back to a really big question mark next to them.
Yeah, I feel like SI is just such the anomaly, right? Which sounds strange. Like, they did have a rough stage 3, but then somehow they really pulled it together and had a phenomenal SI. But here they are again, back on struggle street, even after they've had a chance to kind of correct some issues with the roster. I think they just haven't found what they need to, I guess, to find that synergy, the cohesion between their new core. But I guess it's one of those things where I still have so much faith in the skill of the roster where it's just a matter of time. If something clicks for them, it could be this Playday, it might take a couple more days, maybe it takes the whole stage. But when something clicks between this roster, I think they are going to be their scary selves that we've come to expect.
The big issue that we might have around this roster, Dev, is the fact that, you know, like, we look to last year and we look to the consistencies and inconsistencies of the APAC South rosters themselves. It did feel like a turbulent year, you know. Elevate went first place in stage 1 and then kind of, I'm not going to say went missing by any means, but stage 2, stage 3 went a little bit where, you know,
yeah,
I think that's the best way of putting it.
I mean, the thing with Elevate historically in 2021 is they always crumbled under pressure, and stage 1 had a lot less pressure because there was no major to go to last year. So yeah, they topped APAC South. They went and they played Cloud9, the now Sandbox roster, for that first place in all of APAC. They even managed to get that too, which was amazing for them. No major to go to. Stages 2 and 3, they choked every opportunity that they had to get to a major, and you know, there was so many. I think we counted like 5, 6 different 8 match point opportunities they could have qualified for a major. They didn't, but fortunately, because they were still fairly consistent across the year, they qualified for SI, and what an amazing SI they had. They even took a BO3 win in 2 maps against the eventual world championship champions in TSM. So they have so much to be proud of, and that's why they were criticized so heavily when they changed 2 players on their roster. Don't want to dig into that too much. You know, Neris retired, Napiu, they had some issues, whatever. Like, they've got 2 new blood from the old Sharper roster who failed to come through Relos. I think that, like, they need to bounce back, because the Elevate that we know and love from last year that was 9 points ahead of the competition at the end of the year, far ahead of everyone else, we haven't seen them yet.
No, they have been missing. Well, they can take 2 maps off TSM, but can they take 1 off WILDCARD? Let's have a look at where we're going to determine whether that will be the case or not. Raven, I'll let you go first. Villa, here we go. Deep dive. You got anything for me?
Look, I think Villa has become a bit of a map that, you know, we've seen some decent results with Elevate on. Even WILDCARD, you know, even some of the losses that they've had on Villa, from, if I can recall correctly, have been fairly close. Villa in recent history as well, WILDCARD, big 7-2 victory against Knights on Playday 1. Of course, Knights really felt like they had an off game. Juicy said in the interview last week when they actually won that match against Renatus, that, you know, they felt like Playday 1 was a really just a general bad game for them. But regardless, you know, WILDCARD seems to be a map that they want to be going with at this early stage of stage 1. And look, I think that's good. You've got to play into your strengths, and if you're feeling it, you're feeling it.
Dev?
Yeah, this is Exciting. I don't know if Wildcard would have expected this, but look, Elevate, this was their most banned map, Villa. Most banned map from the last, 3+ months at 28 bans. That is a huge number of bans compared to like their third most banned map is 11 bans. Like this is a lot of bans. They previously did not like Villa, and they haven't played a tier 1 match on this map, except for one map they played against Sonics at the Six Invitational. And believe it or not, they actually won that map as the only map in the series that they lost to, and eventually Sonics, helped to eliminate them from the tournament. So this is pretty exciting for Elevate. Maybe they didn't necessarily bank on playing it against Sonics. It ended up coming up. They thought, wow, we're actually pretty good on this map. They worked it into their map pool. So pretty excited for Elevate. Wildcard don't have much to come in terms of counter strats against them. So I think that this could be the opportunity that Elevate have been looking for to get some points on the board.
And Raven, this is moving away from the Villa conversation, because again, it is quite hard when once again we have 40% of the players in the server completely new to these teams. So it's very hard to go off form and data. As much as we've got it and we can kind of back it in a little bit, it is hard to get a very clear picture here. But I do want to ask you this. Wildcard have been notorious for their performances in 2021. They come into the match last week and kind of stumble and fall a little bit right when they were at the edge. Is this something that we need to be worried about for this roster today and moving forward?
I mean, maybe still today, but I would say moving forward, I feel like that's certainly something that comes from the fact that they've made such big changes with their roster. Their playstyle has started to morph into something very different than what we would have normally come to expect from Wildcard. It is certainly a different team. So I think because of that, it's that argument, right, where sometimes previous results can be hard to look into.
Yeah.
I think also just the idea of being so far in front in a match where you feel like you've got that advantage and kind of just letting it slip a bit, that's kind of the signs of just a roster having some teething issues, kind of settling in a little bit. Of course, like, that's one excuse.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I feel like it's something that they will probably grow out of if they can keep their roster consistent.
Do we think that Elevate are going to be growing out of their troubles, their woesome start here, Dev? I mean, that's a bit harsh to say, but like when we go back and we have a look, they've lost to Renatus, then they lost to Direwolves, so they really are on the chopping block here.
Absolutely. This is their first match against an Oceanic team, however, and we haven't seen them. Yeah, we haven't seen that inter-regional rivalry as of yet. They've lost so far to 2 Southeast Asian teams. Elevate, I don't know. I think that one of the biggest strengths of Elevate, well, 2 biggest strengths of Elevate, has always been their gun skill and their chemistry. And that aggressive play style, if you have good gun skill and good chemistry, that aggressive play style that they love, that crazy creative, that really works so well, and you minimize your errors. And unfortunately for Elevate, changing 2 players, these guys that they've brought on, like Mark and Mr. Punch, they don't have as much experience at this level. They don't have as much experience playing with this lineup. That chemistry is going to take some time to develop, and until then, we're likely to keep seeing little mistakes here and there, micro mistakes, and Wildcard just need to be really keen on punishing that.
Honestly, Raven, I can't wait for the day that Mark and Mr. Punch becomes a Ubisoft cartoon that runs for 7 seasons. It sounds like it at this point. But look, it's probably something that's decent to talk about here is the fact that, again, we mentioned 40% of the roster is new for both of these teams. But neither team have really had teething issues with their new players. Neither Elevate nor Wildcard have had poor performances from, Cairo or OJ. Or then again, you look on the Elevate side, you're talking about Mark and Mr. Punch. So they have kind of come out of the gate swinging. I think probably more so from your point of view, does this kind of lead into a decent part? Like, does the path clear up a little bit for us now in the future?
I think in a way, yeah, it's always good that when you bring new players in that they aren't kind of crumbling under the pressure, especially players that you haven't really seen compete this high up before. Mark and Mr. Punch, fairly fresh to this level and competing on such a high-performing roster. So to see them actually be the 2 highest-rated players for Elevate out of those first 2 play days, that's really great signs. It really just shows that it's more about their teamwork now that they need to start to gel. And to your point, same with Wildcard, Cairo, he's definitely fresh blood. We've said it a lot. He played OCL, which is like the Australian Tier 2 league, for a lot of last year. Didn't get much exposure at the OCN level. And here he is in APAC, and he's their 3rd highest rated player at a 1.11. It's actually a decent rating to maintain. If he managed to maintain that throughout the year, like, you'd be looking at that and being like, all right, yeah, Cairo's a good player. So I think it's certainly a good base to be able to build on, and it's just about getting that synergy and teamwork to start to really fit together consistently.
Well, it's time for us to do some base building of our own. We need to find out which one of these teams is going to be moving forward, and that conversation may be starting to turn. And to do so, and to take you through all of the action, it's Xenox and Guts.
Well, it's a big game. A lot of repercussions, guys. Obviously, for Elevate, if they don't win this, 0 points from their first 3 games. I don't think many would have been expecting that. For Wildcard, of course, if they win, 6 points, looking great, great stage. But if they lose this, does that then take off a little bit of that sunshine from week 1? It would be 2 losses in a row, only 3 points. Like, I feel like this is a game of crossroads.
Yeah, I think there's really big implications for this game, not only for these 2 teams, but the table as a whole. The social very closely split just in favor of Elevate, anticipating this one to be very, very close. And honestly, I'm going to have to back the community, and I'm expecting a tight one.
Yeah, I think obviously we saw that in the predictions as well, everyone going for Wildcard, but let's be real, I think we also could have had a couple maybe lean the way of Elevate. The problem is I went for Elevate last week against Direwolves, and they kind of let me down a little bit, so it was kind of hard to back them in here against Wildcard. We go obviously to Villa. Jackal gets banned out immediately. Elevate's turn now. I thought it was a really good statistic though brought up on the desk. It was of course the wonderful Dev Marta. I almost called him Dev Match Striker, but hey, I wouldn't have been too far off the mark there. About the fact that Elevate do ban Villa quite heftily, but when they do play it, they're actually not that bad.
Yeah, there was an obvious trend over the course of the Six Invitational where they were willing to show that map. They did have some pretty good success on it as well. Will that flow into Stage 1 of APAC South? Well, that question remains to be answered. Quite a different squad to what we've seen at that event. And so far, honestly, the performances from Elevate have been disappointing in comparison. There's definitely a growth phase that they are going through at the moment. And I think it's going to take a long while for this team to start chugging along, especially if they're going to lean into that play style they're renowned for. It will take a while for those players to come in and adjust to that in a competitive format.
Nothing really too crazy with the bans there from either team. Pretty stock standard. The 2 maps that Elevate have played so far, Clubhouse, Oregon for Wildcard. They played Bank against IG, and they played Villa against the Knights, which they won that one comprehensively. And it all started with the first half where they were on the defense. Lo and behold, guys, perfect tie-in. They start here on the defense as well.
In terms of the attacking lineup though, Nook, an operator that has been increasingly elusive throughout Stage 1 of competitive Siege. The nature of attacker repick means that we often see it picked into, but Onigiri is just going to pick it straight off bat. And Villa is a map that can facilitate that playstyle. The basement floor often is not occupied by the defense. There's obviously no objectives down there, but it does allow 4 rotations from both teams. And Onigiri, no doubt, is probably going to enter down below and might be able to find a couple of roamers here from Wildcard. Now, if we cast our minds back to Wildcard and Knights, the most notable thing out of that matchup for me was Molosca. On that roam down below, he was so incredibly powerful and the Knights could not shut him down. I'm sure if Elevate watched that match, it was very obvious to them that was their game style going into it, and they executed it really well. And I'm assuming part of their game plan here on the attack will be to shut that down or to completely mitigate it and not take it head on and instead play a little bit more defensively.
Attacker repick comes out, Onigiri swaps over to the 0, try and get a little bit more information. Tend to see that, especially over towards areas like 90. As we head into our first round of the game now, Elevate make their way in. Wildcard, obviously on the defense, we'll be expecting them to do well, but Villa's one of those maps where realistically it is kind of 50-50. You don't tend to see overwhelming favorites for either side. They obviously were very good defensively against the Knights. They had a 5-1 half, and that set up their 7-2 victory. But I don't think it's going to come as easy against this Elevate team, a team that needs to find results. The beauty for Elevate is that generally when you would look at a team that's made changes, you would look at the players that have come in. But Mark and Mr. Punch both played very, very well against the Direwolves. So they are not the issue. They are not the problem. Expecting to see them continue to play well here against Wildcard.
Direwolves obviously one of benchmark teams at the moment, currently in first place alongside IG. Look forward to that match later tonight, but at the moment, Elevate looking to get a foothold on this particular attack. It won't be Onigiri lurking down below. As he mentioned, did jump off the Nook. Instead, he'll lurk on that Ash. Vinny under quite a bit of pressure over towards AV. Wall already opened up. Was half exposed by the defense intentionally, making it a little bit more precarious for Elevate to walk in, but those angles work both ways, and Vinny needs to be very mindful that he doesn't get caught off guard.
Just quickly, there's only a minute and a half remaining. This has gone pretty quickly for the most part to open things up. Elevate have done a lot, and it is Cairo that does find the opening pick. A player with so much potential has been spoken about with a lot of positives in the first 2 play days, and has been a big part of why Wildcard are where they're at. OJ gets taken down. Mr. Punch, though, the ping a little bit off. Now gets actually a double ping. Might actually wait. No, it doesn't. Just decides to get rid of OJ. And at least ties things back up. 4 versus 4. Just under a minute remaining here for this AVG side. But Elevate still haven't really done a whole lot when it comes to actually getting into a good position here. Pat still over towards top. Brown has the shield still in play. This is a big choke point that Mr. Punch must win this one. Has a bit of backup. They do go out and they get rid of Pat easily. He fell off that.
Bad timing. I think Milo's still on the roam, so it could be powerful. Vinny as well inside of AV, trying to find a pick back, knowing desperately something needs to be found. Cairo elsewhere, though. He's the one to step up to the plate. Nice little angle exposing that position in towards Study. And yes, Elevate have done good groundwork, but how can they transition this across to objective control?
Not much time remaining. Vinny can't win that fight against DCH. Milo, who's been at half health, but basically the entire game, still has a Nitro Cell that could come into play. Cairo's got to make it 3. Expecting now the rush into games. Cairo just holds the angle, but Mark is already through, getting that diffuser down. Where's the help? Obviously, there's no help from DCH at all. It's a quad, but Mark, who goes prone, is able to salvage it in the end for Elevate. Cairo almost with a big ace clutch to start this one off.
Sometimes going prone in Siege is an absolute fallacy. You almost never want to do it, but I think maybe in that sort of situation, the 1 versus 1, Cairo maybe a little bit frantic to try and deny the plant or quickly prevent the retake there in the post plant. Probably wasn't expecting prone, so I guess at the end of the day, it actually did work out there for Mark. Well played by Elevate. I think the groundwork from them really solid. They did a good job in exposing the site. They got a couple of picks. The play down below as well with the nades was also quite strong. Just took them a little bit to get going in terms of actually prodding the site itself and getting a foothold. For the majority of that round, they were outside. But I think Wildcard maybe just feeding them a couple too many picks. Pat as well. We saw him falter over towards Brown Stairs. Just gave them that slight opening. And try as he might, Cairo, one of the new additions to the roster, of course, not quite able to get that ace.
I think the Pat down really was the catalyst for Elevate being able to get on and get that plant down. If Pat stays alive, wins that fight over toward Brown Stairs, I think Wildcard maybe take the round. Not an awful round for Wildcard's sake. Defensively, though, on AVG. And this is the kind of site you do want to be winning, so that can have an effect here, trickle-on effect. They do go over to Stat Trophy, though. So rather than repeating aviator games, we change sites. A good start for Elevate, though, and that's probably what they need. Obviously, 4 eliminations for Cairo, but a nice little split between Mark and Mr. Punch. Kind of, again, goes back into what I was saying at the start of that last round. And by no means are they an issue. They've actually been very good since joining this roster.
I guess that begs the question then, right? Why is Elevate in this position, currently on 0 points? This is a big game for them. A loss here really puts into doubt their chances of making the APAC playoffs. Obviously, you need to finish in the top 4. And if you don't get any points in the first 3 play days, I mean, you probably have to go near flawless from that point onwards to be a shoo-in, especially considering the standings are a little bit more split to what we maybe expect in APAC South at the moment. There's a little bit top-heavy, bot-heavy, etc. But obviously, Elevate not thinking about that at the moment. They're off to a good start here, and they'll be looking to snowball that.
Bomb spotted. Thermal reach in position.
Yeah, and a big round for Wildcard to probably be a little bit more aggressive here. Oscar on the vigil, Pat down below as well on the pulse, trying to get some information early on here to stop Elevate's attack. Does have a couple of pings with cardiac sensor. Nitro Cell, of course, in hand. Another one on site with Cairo on the mute. Did pick up 4 pretty decent eliminations in the last round. Could have got the ace, could have got the round win. OJ playing the more on-site position, though, on the Echo. Minute 30 remaining, and it's 2 rounds in a row that we've seen from Elevate being rather cautious with their approach, getting towards site.
Pretty traditional trademark here from Wildcard. Pat down below on Pulse. Either Kitchen or this particular objective up above. He is pretty renowned for playing this role, and he's feeding a lot of information to the rest of the team, particularly those wanting to defend against Bedroom. Elsewhere, though, on Onigiri on the balcony on the west, does get the first pick. Was taken low, but still a good trade for him. Milo as well, the Vigil on the roam, also low on HP. So the first 2 minutes goes the way of Elevate, but much like last round, can they actually get in towards the objective, win out these trades, and show a little bit more dominance compared to round 1?
Maybe out of control now for Elevate, but they still haven't really got much of a presence over towards Stat Trophy. It's only 40 seconds remaining, but as they did in the last round, their ability to win fights proving to be the difference point, and it's red stairs rather than brown stairs this time. Milo just falls back a little bit, tries to maybe come up with a bit of a surprise, but Sapper gets through onto landing. OJ falls. Sapper might be able to still just peek below red stairs, find that kill, and did so. Off screen, but he did it nonetheless. And now it's a 4 versus 2. Marks on sight. Cairo has to go peek again.
Attackers are activating the bomb diffuser.
Plant secured.
Attackers need to
Pat over towards landing, needs to try and time this with Cairo, but Mark finds him all too quickly. Pat unable to find that trade, misses those shots in towards Trophy. Sapper punishes him with the pistol, and they take round 2.
And you can look at this from 2 ways, but so far, good signs from Elevate and questionable signs from Wildcard to start this game. It is only the start, though. 2 rounds in, but 2 wins for Elevate on the attack here of Villa. And they look pretty cheery. Onigiri's having a grand old time. And honestly, it's a big game for them, though. So there is no surprise to see them come out and play well here. But it's about keeping it up for the entire game. You know, you think back to Direwolves back in Playday 2, and while both teams were going back and forth, Direwolves pulled away at some stage and got the win. You know Wildcard is going to come back here and get a couple of rounds. That's going to happen, but you cannot then fall by the wayside and allow them to get, say, 3, 4, 5 rounds in a row like the Direwolves did.
Bulletproof camera online.
Yeah, definitely concerning signs for Wildcard at the moment. Again, their game plan against the Knights, which was largely successful, hinged, in my opinion, on the staircases being really well held and really well traded out by Molosca, who was floating around. So far, what we've seen in this particular game is those strongholds are not working.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, I can't pinpoint as of yet why exactly that is the case. From what we have seen from some of the POVs, Wildcard are just not looking particularly sharp or confident on these angles and are getting caught out. Elevate, on the other hand, despite maybe not having the best of utility to clear these positions, are still being able to make it work. So full props to the attack so far. I think Elevate have done a good job in shutting down that approach from Wildcard and really preventing them from using that to their advantage. I don't know what the answer is here for Wildcard. They do head us to the tertiary site, and this might be their chance to start getting a bit of momentum their way. If you lose 3 straight on the defense, as we always say, it puts you in a really rough spot.
I know kills aren't everything, guys, but the fact that everyone is still on a donut besides Cairo with 6 kills is an alarming statistic through 2 rounds, that on the defense, you're just not winning these battles as Elevator pushing onto site. It's concerning. Kitchen Dining, maybe they can turn it around, but full credit so far to Elevate to start here on Villa. They've been by far and away the better team. It's about making sure you get the reward, though, for that play. And if they can get a 3-0 start, take Kitchen Dining, basically do the world tour on the attacker side, they'll be hard to beat from here. So it's a massive round for Wildcard.
Elevate are loving at the moment, just leaning into sitting outside and applying pressure from relatively safe positions. They're not wanting to take, you know, vertical control up above, for example, or are all that keen on trading out entries. Instead, they're just going to head straight in towards Laundry. The Thatcher Habana combo on the wall, heading us straight into Dining. And I think that will make Wildcard feel pretty uneasy. Halfway into the round, Elevate, much like that study attack, just prodding the outside of the objective, seeing if maybe Wildcard overpeak.
And the beautiful thing here is we look at Mr. Punch over towards Piano. While obviously they're trying to set up and open up sight, you've still got other players for Elevate sort of roaming around, being in position. They're not just standing outside doing nothing.
Attackers recovered the bomb diffuser.
And this is where they've been winning most of their fights. I mean, well, pretty much 90% of the fights besides Cairo.
Attackers have dropped the
It has
bomb
been all
diffuser.
Elevate elsewhere. Just under a minute remaining. Red Stair still needs to be cleared. In fact, that ended up taking out the drone, Mr. Punch, but should be able to clear this position as Milo falls back over towards landing. And Nevermind continues to just peek this and may actually get this. Nevermind, not going to happen. Mr. Punch did fall to Cairo, though. And finally, Wildcard getting eliminations to go their way at that execution stage of the round.
Mark over towards Dining. Can he maybe bring this back? It's going to be tough as Pat's holding down the line, still the Nitro in hand as well. Wildcard having a good read as to where these final two attackers are approaching the objective from. DCH, though, with the pistol, does find a pick. Onigiri's down, but I don't think the res is really on the cards as Mark looks to re-peek in towards Dining. Again, his position exposed, Pat taken low. But the trade is found, and it's a good response from Wildcard.
Yeah, much better from Wildcard. No, I mean, a lot of it just really does come down to the basics at the end of the day, hitting your shots, winning your fights. Winning that battle over towards red stairs, even if it wasn't the cleanest and there was a bit of help, I think, from a player in Sheets, Wildcard were just able to sort of hold their positions a bit better. Elevate didn't really change their approach all that much. I mean, you commented before that, you know, they were happy to just kind of sit outside, take their time with their approach in opening up kitchen dining. So they didn't change too much from the first two rounds. It just Wildcard were able to hold their angles a little bit better, be a little bit better at keeping Elevate at bay and then winning their fights. I mean, Kyrie is still a big factor, by the way, though. I mean, 8-2 now through 3 rounds is a very significant start from him. And what he's capable of as a player and as a fragger for Wildcard does need to be said and brought to attention. He is having a great game here for Wildcard. And as you said, you win that tertiary site. Now you come back to AVG on the defense. Got to be winning this if you're Wildcard. If you do, you start to build some of that momentum.
And not to oversimplify that previous round all that much, but the critical point of that round was when Elevate tried to take staircase control. That's where it started to fall apart. We saw Milo hold on really nicely over towards landing on top red. And the utility game from Elevate wasn't great, taking out their own drones, nades not hitting the mark, the trades ultimately not going their way. So for Wildcard, that's great. That, again, is, in my opinion, probably what they're aiming for to achieve on these defenses, and that will instill them some confidence that now heading back over towards AVG, they can continue to lean into that and know that it is going to work against Elevate. Maybe they just weren't switched on, particularly in the first couple of rounds, and that can happen, right? Sometimes you jump into an official, you're not playing as sharp as you would expect.
Yeah.
And maybe from this point onwards, Wildcard can begin to build upon what they've established on that tertiary site. As for Elevate, they'll be looking to tidy things up a little bit. Plenty of utility on the board. They have nades available, Flores as well. Those Rotary drones are going to play a key part in clearing out these deployable shields, for example. That was one of their oversights on the previous attempt on the site. Ultimately, they still won the round, but again, something they can improve upon.
All set.
You know what Miloska's like as a player. At times he can be just about anywhere and everywhere. Be so aggressive. It worked out really well for him last week, and I think it was Miloska and Vincia that were having a field day against the Knights back in Playday 1. Both of them, though, have started a little bit cold. Unfortunately, they have Cairo.
Really well played there from Wildcard. Onigiri trying to use his camera, plant it in the top of the wall, shoot down, take out that mute jammer so they can open it, but really well denied by Wildcard. Just a small little game there. Milo down below, now under pressure. As I say that, Elevate 2 swift kills. Now Pat needs to step up on Brown, but again, his timing is just absolutely god-awful, and Elevate will clean up the round.
You could see it, right? The second he even looked to the top of Brown's stairs, you're like, you know he's dead. It's just unfortunate timing. But to be fair, that wasn't the round collapse there for Wildcard. It was even earlier than that. They lost 2 players very quickly just before Pat goes down on Brown stairs anyway. So that was just a quick, sharp execution from Elevate. And again, 2 rounds now on Aviator games that Wildcard haven't even looked at defending really all that well. I mean, this is a little concerning.
I think we're seeing similar issues to the last Playday. Wildcard, they headed into their defense above. They had the lead against IG on Bank, and even in the post-match on some of the tweets, for example, the players came out and said publicly that IG hard countered them and they didn't have an opportunity to get back into the match. What we're seeing so far in this game, in my opinion, is even more of a hard counter from Elevate. They are persistent in going for these staircase fights. They are shutting down Miloska down below, sending multiple players for the trade, and it has been really clean from them so far. I think maybe the tertiary side just throwing off their attack pattern a wee bit, but outside of that, it's been very difficult to see Elevate losing most of these rounds, and it's been really well played by them. But it's up to Wildcard now. You have 2 rounds. Switch something up. Try something a little bit different, because what you're playing at the moment simply is not working, and it's not going to work unless you tidy up these plays massively, because it's simply not working.
Harsh words from Guz, but he's not wrong. 3-1 scoreline in favor of Elevate. Desperately, with 2 rounds to go in the first half, Wildcard will need to find some rounds, beginning with Stat Trophy. If they win it, do you even head back to AVG at that point? It has not been really all that clean from them. And what is a site that statistically on Villa is one of the better sites for defenders, and DCH with the opening pick. Now, to be fair, that has not been entirely that much of an issue. In fact, WILDCARD have had their fair share of opening picks here in the first half. But this round, it goes the way of Elevate. They get a nice early start, no response, 5v4 early in the round as well. And on a side like Stat Trophy really limits you because you do want players down below as well, guys. And now when you've only got the 4 players, you are quite limited. It looks like they've actually got like a 3-1 split, 3 down below, 1 above.
And it's a smoke out first. Of course, probably the worst operator in any lineup to falter first because you can't use those gas canisters late in the round to stall out a attacking push. So that's disappointing for OJ. He'll be sitting on cams now for the remainder of the round and trying to give calls to the team. Pat is playing down below once more, but no pulse in play, instead leaning into the Nitro cell. Kyra already expending his, but didn't find anything. Maybe a drone, but no HP chipped. Again, Elevate, sitting outside. More than comfortable to hold down lines, manipulate the site from a distance, and then really jump on their prey late into the round.
Yeah, and that's been the go-to for Elevate more so in the first 2 rounds. The last round was decently fast. Oh, easy one for Pat. Surely wins this. Does get the down into Sapper. And yeah, well, you could probably sense the frustrating shots there from Pat after the last couple of rounds on Brown Stairs. He does win that fight. Does find his first kill. And that is massive now for WILDCARD to bring it back to a 4 versus 4 with just under a minute left. Kyra, though, caught inside of Astro. Nice Nitro solo from Pat. His 2 for the round. Moss gets a freebie onto Mr. Punch. Literally just runs into him. And WILDCARD might just get a free round after all.
2 players still on the roam down below. They'll need to make their way up. Astro, Mark likely to be the first contact. Onigiri, in theory, has safe entry. Oh, Mark doesn't though. Vinny will easily shut him down. Onigiri left in the 1v3 with 30 seconds to work with.
We've seen Onigiri do some big things before, but now on literally 1 HP. Mloska finishes him off, and well, that's the tag team duo of Milo and Vinny getting the job done in the end for WILDCARD. 3-2 scoreline, not too bad. 1 more round to go in the half to really close things out for WILDCARD, and then if they can get it to 3-3, I think that's probably par for the course. I don't mind that 3-3 scoreline here on Villa. They don't even bother with AVG. Of course, they did win Kitchen Dining, so they head back down there again here for the final round of the half. No surprise. In the end, probably not the more conventional way that we would see teams play defense Villa, where generally AVG is the site that they win and then everything else is kind of up for grabs. WILDCARD have gone the opposite here. But yeah, 3-3 I think would be okay for both teams.
Yeah, quite a bit tidier in that last round from WILDCARD, and it only took 5 rounds, but Milo has finally got himself into the game, and he was a key part of that victory. He replaced a couple of key positions there for some really strong trades, and really locked down the round for WILDCARD. It still was quite a 50-50 end to the round until he started to close out those picks, and really well played. So to him, that'll be a nice confidence boost, and he was firing on all cylinders against the Knights on this map. So maybe once he wakes up a little bit here against Elevate, that will help catapult the team forward. It was a slow start for WILDCARD, but I would agree, a 3-3, especially after that start, would be a minor miracle in a sense, because Elevate completely had them done. But we'll have to see whether or not Elevate can bounce back. This site clearly quite strong for WILDCARD on their previous attempt.
Yeah, 3rd round was a pretty decent win for WILDCARD here in Kitchen Dining. It was probably the first round where Elevate just couldn't get anything to go their way, lost their ones, couldn't really get in onto site. It was the first time WILDCARD looked like maybe the WILDCARD that we knew from Playday 1 and to a degree even Playday 2. They are fighting back here, and that's the difference, right, between probably this WILDCARD roster iteration and well, last year's one, where you know you start down 2-0, they probably drop their heads a little bit and let the game get out of hand. This is the kind of team that will fight and not allow Elevate to get too far in front. And the same can be said for Elevate. You know, you think back to Direwolves, they had, you know, the first 3 rounds it was a 2-1 lead for Elevate, and then Direwolves just went bang and won a couple in a row. So they need to also make sure they don't allow WILDCARD back into this. Cairo lurking down below in basement.
As mentioned previously, Basement Villa. No objectives in sight, but can be the scene for many rotations, both from the attack and the defense. Typically, you'll be sending one of your stronger fraggers down below to see if they can maybe catch said roamer off guard or said entry if you are one of the defenders. So it can often lead to some pretty interesting engagements. Elsewhere though, Sapper straight in towards Living, uncontested, unspotted. Might be able to make a play in Sheets.
Yeah, this is much better than the last time around. And then loses out to Pat. Sapper, I thought, went into Sheets pretty much uncontested, but Pat peaked that almost like he had the info, and Pat has woken up. The first couple of rounds, especially both sides of AVG, Pat was, well, questionable on Brown Stairs, but has been now magnificent elsewhere. Cairo getting, I think, maybe a tag on to miss the punch, and suddenly things for Elevate have gone into a disarray. .40 seconds remaining in the round. 2-man advantage for Wildcard, should be able to close this one out. Nice headshot though from TCH through the wall. Does get rid of Vincent. Finds a second one as well from Astro. Now in a very winnable position here, although time it could be a factor for Elevate. They do have diffuser in hand through Mark. Little shot from Pat as he falls away. That was over towards Mark in Laundry. Flashbang can push out. Pat's been pretty good from Dining. OJ wins his fight. OJ can't get the second immediately though. Now full white, 9 seconds as DCH and Mark pushing in onto site. Bulletproof Cam is up to watch it all unfold. Still 2 nitro cells as well for Wildcard. It is the Pat show at the moment though. He has come back with a vengeance, and so has Wildcard. It's 3-3 to close out the first half.
Good little way to close out proceedings there for Wildcard, and Pat, the man of the hour in that 6th round. Such a strong performance. He shut down the lurk, he held down the line over towards Music, and really prevented any sort of comeback there from Elevate. Again, a big confidence booster for him. Pat was just absolutely getting decimated in those earlier rounds. Brown Stairs in particular, he was getting siege timed over and over again, and even elsewhere his aim did not look as confident as maybe he would like. But nice little booster for him, and Wildcard salvaging that half in my opinion. It was a really poor start and it didn't look like things were going to go their way, but funnily enough it was that tertiary site that brought it back for them, winning Kitchen twice. Elevate not looking as strong on that particular objective. Will that come back to bite them? Who knows?
Elevate winning 3 of the first 4, but Wildcard winning 3 of the last 4. Both factually correct, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you say it like that. Still, Wildcard closing out the second half of the first half. That also is factually correct. It's good though, because I think for both teams there's a lot to take from that first half. Elevate, as we know, haven't won any games so far to start this season, so to get off to a good start, get a couple of rounds, almost look like the Elevate that we know and love. But then for Wildcard, what is essentially probably a mission for them is to overcome these instances as they had last year where they just kind of fell apart. They didn't fall apart. They fought back, and they're in the game. So both teams, I think you can almost give them both a tick to start that first half. And we'll see, though, who's going to get that second tick in the second half and actually win the game.
Yeah, it was, to be frank, not an amazing half of Siege for either team. But, you know, sometimes the better games of Siege aren't the technically perfect ones. They are sometimes wars of attrition where teams have to battle it out, and things might not always be going their way, but it's almost who can make the best of a bad situation to an extent. We'll see if that continues in the second half. Dynamics can often shift as we switch halves. Wildcard now on the attack, and so far in this stage, over the course of the first 2 days, they've looked pretty decent on their attacks. Again, that's actually been their favourite side, or at least it was last week against Invictus Gaming, and they're no pushover. So expecting big things from Wildcard here. In the first round, we head over towards Aviator Games. What can Elevate deliver, though, in response? Onigiri, aggressive. I think he really wants to lock down this study position. Wildcard with multiple members outside, seeing if maybe they can find this early pick.
Yeah, and on the flip side, though, I think for Elevate, their attacks weren't that great in the first 2 Playdays, so at the very least, getting 3-3 here in Villa is probably good for them. Their defenses were at least enough to kind of go 3-3, so this could actually be a game that does go to OT, unless someone decides to maybe just step up that pace, go to that next level and leave the other team behind. Cairo has just slowed down a little bit, but that's what happens when you go 8-2 in the first 3 rounds.
Hey, gas prices are expensive at the moment. You can't go full foot to the pedal all the time.
Has eased off the gas a little bit, but fortunately, others on the team have started to stand up. Cairo, though, hello. That's an easy one on to Mark to cast a blessing. No swing from the player at Brown Stairs, but Molosca also not really playing into that. That's the flash over towards DCH. Can they remove him from Brown Stairs comfortably in the way that Pat was for Wildcard?
The nade meta, as it was called at 6 Invitational, there as players try to find something from below, but Pat caught off guard. These stairs have been his curse, but Vinny trades the pick. Gets shot in the back though, DCH straight through the smoke to find it back. Wildcard with Milo down, now in a precarious position.
So aggressive from Onigiri. DCH, the one holding Brown Stairs. Onigiri just comes over and says, if you're not going to play down there, I will, and pushes down, finds a kill. But fortunately, they still have that shield, and DCH can fall back. Doesn't have to worry about study. They have the information. Kairo's low and dead, and Molosca will be following him into the grave. A great defense win for Elevate over towards Brown Stairs, and they do what Wildcard could not.
That staircase just not going Wildcard's way, but Elevate playing a textbook. Really good aggression, the timing on point. The crossfire at the end really doesn't get much better than that. Again, quite a messy game overall. Not the cleanest take, not the cleanest defense, but Elevate in that war of attrition, they are rising out on top. Trophy stat will be played second. Let's see if they can back up that momentum here. I think that was a good start for them. They can lean into a similar staircase-centric playstyle here with red stairs. And if Wildcard are going to continue to have issues, it's going to be a tough day for them.
No, red stairs has been all right for Wildcard, mate. Come on.
One round it was. Kitchen.
Hey, better than the, what's that now, 3 rounds of Brown Stairs that have really let them down.
Yeah.
They just need to put some tape around that and just let that one go and probably don't even contest it anymore for the remainder of this second half. A good start though for Elevate, because again, similar to Wildcard, right? When I mentioned sort of at that halftime period where Wildcard were getting tested and then they had to kind of fight back. Elevate then found themselves in that position at the start of this second half, and I thought that was a very solid defensive round. The way that DCH was able to play off of Onigiri's death as well, understanding, all right, he swings, he dies, I then need to trade that as well, and then that ends up confirming the Brown Stairs position, and they didn't overplay it too much. We saw Pat, like when Pat was on Brown Stairs, was kind of like looking away, but in the middle of Brown Stairs, whereas when DCH needed to maneuver, he actually moved all the way off of Brown Stairs and held the top side of it. So I thought they just played it so much better than Wildcard did on AVG.
Oh no, not again. Wildcard fans hold their breath. One of the scariest players in the region in Onigiri now holding down the position. These drones likely will force him back, however. So you can
not yet though.
relief.
Not yet.
Maybe.
It has got to, oh, never mind. Now it gets droned out. Yeah. Just thought for a second, had they not been able to find that, could have maybe held the angle, then swung and found a kill into study.
They've actually got him trapped in Vault. Wildcard with a really good crossfire, decent drones established. This should be an open kill.
Nah. What they don't realize is they're trapped in with Onigiri. He's not trapped in from them. You've got to be so careful. Even in a 1 versus 2. Vincia peeking around study. Onigiri did just take a little bit of damage, really keeping the pressure on here. It is Mr. Punch, though, who does come and save the day.
The timing.
And he has been able to escape. Molosca's got no idea now, and this could actually be the round if Onigiri gets a freebie, which he does to Vincia, and a second. As I said, they're trapped in there with Onigiri. It's not the other way around. It'll be a 5-3 lead unless Cairo and OJ can bring it back for Wildcard.
Perfect from Onigiri as Elevate look to ride this high, a 5-3 lead on the cards. OJ with the fuser in hand makes his way through landing, trying to find an entry and does. It's not bad, wasn't traded. Cairo as well still up, 10 kills so far. I wouldn't rule Wildcard out just yet.
Oh, he saw the foot. He did see the foot, and Cairo is able to respond. And by the way, that earlier OJ kill got him the diffuser back in hand. So that's diffuser on the side of Wildcard. That nade ends up just getting nothing of Sapper, unfortunately. But still, diffuser in hand for OJ. Still 50 seconds remaining in the round. And it doesn't really feel like that. Probably felt like there was maybe not as much time. But Wildcard have the time to now reconvene. OJ and Cairo with diffuser can play off of each other here. Very winnable in the 2 versus 2.
Sapper with 3 canisters. Needs to delay time. He's tucked close right. Sends out 1. 30 seconds available. Wildcard probably forced through start.
Still 2 more Gas Babes in hand. Yeah, not much time here. They really need to just win the fights. Gas Babe does go out, but OJ sticks it. Kyra watches. He falls immediately. What a swing. DCH almost went down, but he wins it. Does he know that he got the down low? But OJ got off the diffuser. He's going for the revive. There's just not that much time here. Elevate don't really have to do a whole lot. Kyra's back up. OJ has to play frontman while Kyra just goes for the plant. Hasn't got really that much information.
Oh.
What a shot onto DCH, but Sapper is coming in from behind. He can't win it though. OJ! Oh my! Big plays! What a round win for Wildcard!
Stepping up to the plate. What a play. Clutch from OJ. A round that should not have gone the way of Wildcard. That was a 4 versus 2 after this devastating start. The flank from Onigiri, that rat play in study, put them in pole position to take it. Wow. But after the res, they couldn't hold on. Sapper, a valiant effort, but OJ just looking too good there.
Yeah. Tremendous. I mean, the start from Onigiri, you applaud that. Really well played. You mentioned it. Kind of got pinched inside of Vault, and yet somehow weaseled his way out. Not only that, but then found a couple of kills and really put Wildcard on the back foot. But, you know, you look at OJ and Kyra and their ability to bring Wildcard back into the round, almost like the young and the beautiful there. And Kyra's the young and OJ's the beautiful.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me.
Oh, no. That also works too, but I mean, you're both really. Let's be honest.
Thanks.
I'm just old and ugly at this point.
Oh man.
5 seconds.
Oh, well, you could be the young and I can be the beautiful. You're not that young though. So.
I'm not. I'm kind
sure
of a
really
boomer. 4-4 scoreline here going into the 9th round. Wildcard, unfortunately, though, to lose a player, so we might be coming back to us here for a second. It might be an unintended little break that maybe both teams wouldn't mind. To be all honest, I think a little breather could actually do both Wildcard and Elevate some good. For Elevate, well, more so to maybe drown their sorrows a little bit, because that was a round they definitely did let go. But for Wildcard, they can obviously sit back and very much cherish a round win that they probably didn't expect to have.
Yeah, and I think a large portion of that can land on the shoulders of Kyra, particularly in the first half. Stepped up massively, but it has been a pretty well-rounded team effort. And from what we've seen, at least, if you want to focus in on the attacks from Wildcard, on the entries, for the most part, I think the philosophy behind their entries has been quite strong. They had good angles set up, at least in that previous round, and the drones, for the most part, with an asterisk, were okay. They did let Onigiri slip through, though. That was a big, big mistake. They were able to recover from it, but I'm sure they won't be very pleased with how that went down. So you're right. This is actually a great impromptu tactical timeout for both teams. Wildcard, they might be having a quick chat as to how they can tidy up that entry, maybe discuss what went wrong and how they miscommunicated that, mistimed that particular push. And for Elevate, on the flip side, they can maybe have a quick chat as to how they let that round slip away. It was a 4 versus 2. They still had players isolated down below. They were unable to deny that plant for 30 seconds, even though they had 3 smokes. That's not a nom-nom.
Yummy. Can we get OJ up for just a split second? Because I could be wrong, but it looks as if he's at a hotel gym. You ever been to a hotel gym before, Gus?
Have I ever been to a gym?
Actually, you're right. That is probably a question I could have posed to you first.
No.
But OJ pumps weights. Look at that.
Yeah.
Do you think that...
How much do you reckon he can lift? Well, he managed to carry his whole team in the last round, so he can carry it.
Well, Kyra did a bit of work too.
It's all OJ. I'm an OJ stan.
You reckon that boxing bag gets a bit of work when things don't quite go the way for Wildcard?
He was straight on it after last Playday against IG.
He's got the treadmill. He's got whatever that contraption is on the left. I don't know what. It looks like a helicopter at this point. Maybe pointing back to the old Rafflecopter days. But massive round for OJ, isn't it? And I think in those moments when you win those kind of rounds, OJ and Kyra, obviously Kyra was there as well. It just, that inner belief that you guys as a team can just win from any situation. You're down 4-2, doesn't matter. We can still win. You're down 2-1 to start the game as Elevate come out of the blocks, doesn't matter. We can still go win 2-3 rounds in a row. And that's probably where Wildcard is at now as a team, where I don't think they were at that position last year. I don't think they had that inner belief as a team, and they probably let a lot of games slide when things did go a little bit sour. For Elevate and good old Ronald in the background, again, they shouldn't be too displeased with how things are going either. You think back to the first 2 play days, and obviously both without any points. The thing is, really, both games weren't that bad. Renatus is a good team. You lose 7-5. It is what it is. Direwolf's proving to be a very good team. You lose 7-4. It is what it is. And now WILDCARD is also a pretty decent team. I think it's just a combination that where APAC South is at now is just other teams have caught up.
It's such a tough region, and you throw into the mix best of ones and the volatility that comes with that. You can't really be expected to be at your very best in every single match and every veto to go your way.
Yeah.
That's not a realistic prospect. The best thing you can do is put your best foot forward and see if that translates to a result. So far for Elevate, it hasn't quite been the case. I think the most disappointing thing when you look at Elevate's performances is they've both times been relatively close to at least getting 1 point in overtime. They had that 7-5 loss against Renatus, then the 7-4 loss against Elevate, both times just missing out on that singular point. And that's been the story across the entirety of the league. We haven't had a game yet actually go to overtime, and dare I say it, I'm probably going to curse it, but this is probably looking like the one match that is going to go overtime.
Well, how many times have we seen games like this, though, guys, get to 4-4, back and forth, both teams looking good, and then one team just wins 3 in a row? We've both just seen that countless times. I mean, in all actual, it kind of happened against Elevate and Direwolves in that second half on Oregon. Direwolves' defense just led them to that win pretty comfortably. I think right now it could go very much either way.
10 seconds left
Ooh,
before insertion.
that's a big indecisive call from you,
50-50
Jay.
on the fence, however you want to say it. It's
God, some things never change. Some things never change.
when you think back to the social vote at the start of the game, what was it? 51% to 49%.
Yep.
So I think that tells a pretty picture. If anything, actually, the caster predictions where we all went for wildcard was quite surprising to me. I thought there would be a couple of Elevate votes, but not to be. Sometimes it's one of those instances, though, where even though it says all 5, Onigiri, yes, did land a few shots under Mile, didn't get the down, though. Sometimes when you do get all 5 votes, doesn't necessarily mean it's that one-sided.
And you have to remember that the prediction champion did do his first, so all the other casters are likely just copying him. Although they need to remember that he's already got a good lead this year, so you wouldn't want to be copying, otherwise you're just going to finish with the same margin.
He's talking in third person. he won D deployed. Haven't seen too much line recently. It's going to get a bit of a workout from OJ. Could see it in the first round of this second half, and that was about it so far here on Villa. Does tend to see plate, especially with Jackal Band.
It's already much cleaner from Wildcard, sorry to butt in. No roam on that side of the map from Onigiri towards the south on the top floor. Instead, he's underneath the objective. It has been reattempted here by Elevate. A 3-man roam down below. Now, Wildcard's drone usage so far has seemed okay. If they get a decent read on this, I wouldn't put it past them to either hunt down these roamers or maybe, as they're doing now, adjust, rotate over towards bedroom, see if you can get something done on the objective itself. Force Elevate's hand. I do think Onigiri has repositioned himself, though, up above on the second floor, so maybe that window of opportunity has now ceased, but this is a funny little dynamic. No one's really entered an engagement face-to-face, but there's a lot of mental warfare going on in terms of gaining this information and actually deciding where you want to enter.
Oh. Never mind. I thought maybe a chance of a missed drone, not to be. Doesn't matter anyway. DCH did win that fight against Vincier. Got traded immediately, though, by Pat, who has continued to have a renaissance of sorts here in the second half. He's having a very, very good game. Of course, can't forget Cairo, the first to double digits. We have lost those KDAs on the side of the screen, but cannot forget how impactful, once again, he has been for Wildcard. 30 seconds remaining in the round, though. Mark's still down in sheets as Wildcard finally starting to open things up over towards Stat Trophy.
20 seconds on the board, a 4 versus 4 in round number 9. Mark's still down below, Nitro Cell in hand. Wildcard trying to get these entries, but Pat shut down.
Tough shots to hit from that kind of angle, from that kind of distance. Full credit for Pat to even try that, but I think Elevate always in the position to win from those kind of angles. And again, you could see it. Cairo's still alive, but yeah, no time here. It's an interesting one because that round didn't really feel close. WILDCARD really got onto site so late into the round that time became a factor. Firstly, they hadn't really cleared out players on site at all, and the players that were still left on site for Elevate just in so much better positions. That long distance with, you can only see like a slight pixel, but on the other side of it, they can see almost all of Pat. So it's just such a difficult shot for WILDCARD to be hitting those.
Yeah, it was an intriguing little decision there. Well, it wasn't a little decision, it was a large decision at that from WILDCARD to completely rotate. They cleared out AVG, that side of the map. That's what they did last time. But for whatever reason, they then made the call. You know what, let's rotate over towards bedroom. Now, I don't know if that's because they thought there were more players off site than maybe there were, as Elevate rotated back, or if it was just a precarious road forward and they didn't feel comfortable clearing out Stat Trophy from that southern side. Either way, that spanner in the works didn't really work at all. Elevate able to shut that down on the entry, looking quite sharp. And unfortunately, no one from WILDCARD really being able to step up there on that push and finding the kills necessary in response.
10 seconds to insertion.
I'm bringing it back, but this is kind of where I mentioned it before, especially during that little technical break where how many times have we seen that 4-4 scoreline? And then just the team decides, well, not decides, but is able to then just sort of pull away and get a couple of rounds in a row. And especially at that 4-4, because it doesn't take much, right? You win one round, okay, 5-4. Then 6-4 is suddenly not only match point, but 1 point secured, OT minimum. A lot of mental pressure then on that team that's down 6-4 to then bring it back. So an opportunity presents itself for Elevate. They already won AVG to start this second half. If they can do it once again here in the 10th round, then obviously that sets them up. That's at least 1 point secured. They'd be off the donut in terms of the overall standings. OT minimum secured, and WILDCARD certainly under the pump.
Big round for both teams. Onigiri. Can you open up proceedings again? Could punch the window, line of sight over towards study balcony, instead just shoot straight through. Shots land onto OJ, not enough to find the kill, but no doubt going to be a point of pressure that WILDCARD need to monitor as they go for this control. Pat has the diffuser in hand. He's repelling currently on that study balcony. That hard breach on the Habana, those ex-Kairos, going to be quite critical in opening up the lines of sight. We've seen that be a trend so far today and exposing that aviator bomb site. So we'll have to see how much damage he can do.
I think one of the downsides I've noticed of WILDCARD today is just their ability to lose health too easily. I've seen it happen to Milo 2 or 3 times. OJ now, where just nothing really else is going back the other way, and now you're kind of just at half health or below for the rest of the round. It's happened again here. Milo losing that confrontation. Yeah, he obviously hasn't gone down and died, but it's still not ideal. But that both OJ and Milo essentially will go down very quickly in a gunfight. Does go back to Onigiri though. Yeah.
Should have traded that. DCH as he transitions across. 2 players from WILDCARD staring down that angle, neither able to find the kill. Milo as well needs to be careful behind Mark as well, applying pressure. And he does find a nade pick, but Mark could trade back. There we go. Milo was low on HP, no chance to turn around and maybe find that kill. And now Mark's going to be a point of pressure for WILDCARD to deal with.
Still just under a minute remaining. Mark again. A freebie onto Vincia. Here's a couple of footsteps outside and cannot get away from Pat. And I think right now for WILDCARD, you've got the 3 players alive that have been the most instrumental. OJ, Pat, and Cairo here on Villa. It's been quiet from Vinny and Milo. That's not bad though, because those 2 were the stars last week. So it does show and highlight WILDCARD as a team. Core 5, everyone can stand up and step up. Onigiri, oh, that's an easy double lineup onto Cairo and Pat. The game sense from Onigiri, next level. Elevate, go to match point here on Villa.
And in doing so, they have now secured their first point at minimum here in APAC South for 2022. They're off the donut. Woo! So they can rejoice at that, but still, they want to get this job done in regulation, get a full 3 points, and really start to make a run for the top 4. It was a good 10th round from them, Mark down below with good pressure, and then Onigiri, he was lurking the northern side of the map for the entirety of that round, catching 2 attackers off guard, and the curse of the staircase is seemingly continuing here for WILDCARD.
It does now mean that Fury is the only team that has not picked up a point here for APAC South. Of course, they play after this against Knights, so they will have an opportunity, as WILDCARD have called a tactical timeout. We see the Thorn though on Mr. Punch, Guz, and I think we saw it last week between Knights and Renatas and maybe a couple of other matchups, but both of the times it only lasted one round, didn't really have much of an impact with the Razor Blooms. What do you think here of the decision for Mr. Punch here on Villa, Thorn?
I'll give the same thoughts, I think, when you asked me last time, right? The utility is, not to sound too harsh, borderline useless, but you have a really strong loadout. So when you're in a dominant position like this, and Mr. Punch clearly being given the license to kill, it's not the worst of decisions. The util can sometimes make, funnily enough, staircases a little bit more challenging to push, for instance, because you don't want to get caught out by those Razor Blooms. But outside of that, there's plenty of other operators, in my opinion, that would provide better utility. But when you're in this sort of position and in this sort of meta, I mean, you can justify it. I don't think WILDCARD will be stressing too much about that, though. They have other issues to worry about. And then number one issue at the moment is the scorecard, 6-4.
Yeah.
This has not been a very strong map from them so far. But this site was their salvation on their defense. Maybe on attack it can prove to be a source of momentum as well.
Is it worrying for WILDCARD because their attacks really haven't looked all that successful, all that fulfilling? I know, we've only really seen the 4 rounds and they've won one of them, but it is concerning. And the other part that's concerning for me is that we've seen, at least in APAC South, teams win Playday 1 and then really struggle after that. I think it happened to Knights in Stage 3 where they won the first Playday against WILDCARD and then, as we know, didn't get 3 points for the rest of the stage. I'm not saying that's going to happen for WILDCARD, but have we gone maybe a little early on the WILDCARD bandwagon? If they lose this to Elevate, 3 points from the first 3 Playdays, it's not awful, but it's probably not like the train that we thought that had left the WILDCARD station. As Onigiri opening pick onto OJ, no EE1Ds, and a big detriment for WILDCARD here in this match point round.
6 kills since the rehost. Onigiri well and truly switched on, and that has probably been one of their strengths in this game so far. The early phases of these rounds, often finding kills, not being traded out. The damage as well, most of the time in favor of Elevate, so that has the flow-on effect of late round, meaning that they're stronger and more difficult to take down. WILDCARD, unfortunately, on the receiving of that at the moment. Somebody right now needs to really step up, be a strong force here on this push. 2 minutes remaining in the round, and WILDCARD look to take from Dining across. Pat as well at the hard breach. He'll probably situate himself near Laundry and open up that line of sight later in towards the round. Not all but lost here for WILDCARD, but it is a very, very difficult start to come back from.
We've seen them already in a couple of rounds be able to get back in and find a couple of round wins. Wasn't too long ago, of course, OJ, that big clutch, and we've seen Cairo have some massive plays too. It's all time as well here for WILDCARD. No need to panic, no need to make brash decisions. Have not quite been able to really hit the mark here on the attacking side of Villa. Cairo has the Ash license and well and truly earned here on Villa so far.
WILDCARD, where can they apply pressure at the moment? It doesn't look like top floor is really going to be on the agenda. A 2-2 split. Milo and Cairo, they're the two to be watching out for. They'll be looking to try and make a push over towards Sheets, maybe Kitchen as well. Double pincer down on some of these positions. Sapper, he's a little bit out of position at the moment. Could be caught off guard. Again, WILDCARD wanting to find a pick back for the 4v4. Marlo as well, looming over towards China as Cairo actually rotates down below, so they'll link up. Still though, no pick in response. This is going to be really tough unless Cairo finds this player.
Shotgun in hand as well, but Cairo is able to predict that. Nice swing. Suddenly pantry control established now for WILDCARD. They did lose Moloska elsewhere, but honestly don't need him right now. If they can win the fight against Mr. Punch, they can get the site, and they do just that. Vinny and Cairo combining. DCH drops down into Laundry. And Sapper does get one back, at least onto Cairo. Vinny takes a big chunk of damage, but he wins the fight against Sapper. DCH won, now in a 1 versus 1 to win the game for Elevate. Against Vincere, gets the down. That's the GG's in chat. They've won it. They've done it. Elevate with all 3 points as DCH lets out the frustration. Well and truly, Elevate back here at APAC South.
They elevate themselves in the standings. They needed that result. And you can see, probably for the first time in this stage, some smiles from the most wholesome team in APAC. And that's what we love to see. was a good performance from Elevate. It was a good start. Got a little bit difficult for them in the mid-game, but they closed it out in a professional fashion. And that's what they needed, a big game like this to roll some sort of momentum into the stage.
Well, what did I say, guys? At 4-4, we had that little technical break. I kind of said it, and in the way, maybe either jinxed it if you're a Wildcard fan or the blessing if you're an Elevate fan. It ended up happening. A quick 3 rounds in a row on the defense. Elevate, in some ways, doing to Wildcard what the Direwolves did to them last week. All 3 points secured. That's now top 4. Not secured or anything, but at least now marginally back in the hopeful books for them. And it ended up being kind of like a double pointer in a way, because Wildcard were looking to go to 6 points. You've stopped that from happening, so that's at least one team you've been able to sort of peg back a little bit, get yourself 3 points, get yourself going again, and it sets up a tantalizing match for Elevate next week against the Knights. Knights not exactly a book in for that top 4 spot, so Elevate could kind of just leapfrog some positions.
Well, I guess questions now have to really be raised about Wildcard if they're shooing for top 4. I thought the first couple of weeks, the Knights' victory, the close loss against IG, things were looking really good for them, but this is a loss I think that's going to really hurt. It's probably going to sting more than the Invictus loss, seemingly, because I don't believe Elevate were at the same level, and they probably weren't expecting them to be as strong as they were today. So I think there's going to be a lot of deep thinking behind the scenes for Wildcard to try and recuperate from that one.
Back over to the desk with the young, bold, and the beautiful.